Greetings from Mesa United Methodist Church of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We hope this message will be meaningful and relevant to your life and your relationship with God. We invite you to join us for worship on Sunday mornings. Our traditional service is at 8:30 a.m. and at 11 a.m. we gather for contemporary worship. More information may be found at our website, mesaviewumc.com. Now may you be blessed through the reading and hearing of God's holy word. In our second scripture reading, coming us from the Gospel according to Matthew, in the 15th chapter. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." And Jesus answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. This is the word of God for you and me, the people of God. Thanks be to God. The theologian Karl Barth once said that preachers should work with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. Now, whether that still holds true or not is up for debate, the biggest problem being that fewer and fewer people actually read the newspaper anymore. But as we watched the events unfolding in Baltimore over the past week, I couldn't help but view and hear everything that was taking place there through the lens of the story of the Canaanite woman. One of the commentators who lives in Baltimore said that what saddened him the most was that the scars and destruction of the race riots from 1968 were still present. And his fear was that in nearly 50 years, the scars and destruction from these riots will still be present as well. And my initial response to that was that the reasons for the race riots in 1968 are still present, but I pray that they won't be present in another 50 years from now. That we will begin to do something. That we will begin as a nation to change how we live together. But that will require us to look deeply at our lives, at our culture, at our country, and to look at it in profoundly different ways. The Reverend Dr. George Hermanson says, "Social conventions develop over centuries and by definition are never explicitly discussed or agreed upon. A crucial aspect of convention is that it is unspoken and taken for granted. Indeed, so taken for granted that we are by and large completely unaware of how these codes are embedded in our most deeply held sense of what is true, right, and just." It is that sense of social convention, the unwritten social conventions, that drove what we saw happening in Baltimore and also drives the interaction between Jesus and the Canaanite woman. We are told that Jesus has entered into Gentile territory when he crosses into Tyre and Sidon. He's not crossed just a political boundary. He's crossed a cultural boundary, a religious boundary. He's passed out of his own place and space. And the first person he encounters seemingly is this Canaanite woman. And that's really all we need to know about her to make some instantaneous decisions about who she is and what we think about her. Because the Canaanites are longtime enemies of the Israelites, going all the way back to the Noah story. Noah curses his son Ham through his grandson and said, "Cursed be Canaan." When the Israelites are entering into the promised land, who is it that occupies that land? The Canaanites. And we're actually told in Deuteronomy that the Israelites are told by God about those who occupy the land, "You shall annihilate them." That this is not just some permission to treat them roughly or to take their land from them. Actually, the scripture says, do not let anything that breathes remain alive. These are not people the Jews are concerned about. Probably they just ignore everything about the Canaanites. Everything that they do, everything that's going on in their communities until they are forced to deal with them. Something raises up and they say, oh, there goes those Canaanites again. What are we going to do? And the things they say about the Canaanites are not really all that flattering. So this woman comes up to the disciples and she begins causing this ruckus because she's not just asking for healing for her daughter, she's actually shouting at Jesus. Lord, have mercy, heal my daughter. And at first, the disciples, including Jesus, just choose to ignore her, hoping that if they don't interact, she'll just go away. But she continues shouting at them, and so the disciples say to Jesus, send her away so that we can be at peace. Now, we already have several stories in the Gospels in which the disciples come to Jesus and said, would you send this person or these people away? And in all those other stories, Jesus rebukes the disciples and gives the petitioner what they want. That's not what happens in this story. In another parallel story found in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is leaving Jericho, which was once a Canaanite city until Joshua comes in and the walls come a-tumbling down and kicks the Canaanites out and becomes an Israelite city. Jesus is leaving Jericho and he encounters Bartimaeus, a blind man, outside the city gates. And Bartimaeus is shouting out to him, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And the crowd tells him to be quiet, to go away. And the more the crowd tells him to stop, the shout louder the Bartimaeus yells, Son of David, have mercy on me. And so Jesus calls Bartimaeus to him and asks what he wants. And then says, your faith has made you well, and immediately Bartimaeus is able to see and go on his way. That's exactly the same setup we have with the story of the Canaanite woman. Except for one key characteristic, and that is that she is a Canaanite. And therefore they really want nothing to do with her. But she keeps saying, help me, have mercy on me. And Jesus' response, his first response is so totally out of the ordinary, what we would expect him to say. We almost have to do sort of a double take. And he says that I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. And so she goes down on her knees begging him, have mercy on me. And Jesus says it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Now, through the passage of time and the vagaries of translation, we really sort of miss what Jesus says to this woman. Because this is not just sort of a rebuke, it's actually a racial slur that was popular in first century Palestine towards those who were Canaanites. There's a term which we use which references female dogs, begins with a B. It sort of begins to move in that direction, but it doesn't really still capture the violence of the word that he uses. Instead, it's more as if Jesus had said, he'd called her a coon or a chink or a wop or a spick or a mick or a dyke or a kike or a towelhead. Any of those terms that get thrown around is sort of like a punch in the face to the person you say it to. Usually said by people who are in power to those who lack power. And they do so often without even thinking about the ramifications of what it is that they are saying, because the culture says it's true and right and just. Now, many of us are familiar with this image from the riots. This is Tanya Graham, who was stopping her son from participating in the riots, and she was sort of hailed by a section of the news media, we'll be honest and say the white news media, who said, if only we had more mothers like this, we wouldn't have these riots. as if that's really what the cause of the riots was all about. Somehow we were disgusted by what we saw in the rioting, but we were not as equally disgusted, or at least we didn't talk about, all the things that led up to the anger that caused those riots. And when they tracked down Tanya and asked why she did this, why she sought out her son, it wasn't because she thought that everything that they were doing was wrong, that there were better ways to seek justice. She said she did it so that her son wouldn't be, in her words, another Freddie Gray, the young man who had died from the wounds sustained while he was in police custody that caused this, his larynx crushed, his spine nearly severed at his neck. She said that she did it so that her son wouldn't be another Freddie Gray. So she said, I can either beat him to get him to stop, or I can leave and watch the police beat him, maybe even kill him. So I think we have to ask, is that what we want to hail and lift up? It's okay if she beats her son to stop, because the alternative is the police will do it for her. Either you have to beat him or the police will do it. So what I hear Tanya Graham saying is, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. Save my son. And she's saying to us, cross over that boundary line. Cross over into Tyre and Sidon. Come and see what our life is like over here. Not what you imagine it's like, what you pretend it's like. Cross over and see the world that we live in. A world in which in Baltimore only 36% of African American males will graduate from high school. A world in which the unemployment rate in her neighborhood and neighborhood of Freddie Gray is nearly 50%, because all the jobs that they used to occupy have all gone overseas. A world in which 92% of all arrests for marijuana possession are of African Americans, even though whites and blacks use drugs in exactly the same percentages. A world in which African American children are 9 times more likely to die under the age of 1 than are white children. A world in which in Baltimore County there's a 20-year life expectancy difference between the richest section of Baltimore and the poorest section of Baltimore, separated by 6 miles. A 20-year difference in life expectancy. Come and see the world exposed by the Baltimore Sun in an article series done just in the fall, in which they looked at the nearly 300 cases of police abuse that have been filed in just the past 4 years, amounting to $6 million paid out to its victims, in which the Sun found that those cases detail a frightening human toll. Officers have batted dozens of residents who suffered broken bones, head trauma, organ failure, and even death, coming during questionable arrests. And in almost every case, prosecutors or judges dismissed the charges against the victims if charges were filed at all. And this was not just young men. It was a 67-year-old church deacon and an 80-year-old great-grandmother who was thrown to the ground by the police officer and called that B word. And so while we can decry the rioting and the destruction and the looting, and we should, at the same time, we should also say this community has something to be angry about. And we can say that not every police officer is racist, that not every one of them is bad or evil, that there are great police officers out there whose job they see to protect and to serve, and we should celebrate them. But to castigate all police as being bad is the same as castigating all African Americans as being criminals. But I don't think that we can anymore continue to ignore the problem in their story and just hope that it goes away. If we don't say anything, it'll just go away. We'll wait for the new news cycle, and next week we won't have to worry about it anymore. Because I see Tanya Graham as our modern-day Canaanite woman, crying out, "Hear me. Have mercy on me. Heal not just my son, but my community and my nation." Seeing her kneeling down and saying, "Have mercy on me." How many more mothers do we have to see burying their children before we say enough is enough? In Matthew, I think we can date Jesus' ministry BCW and ACW. That is, before the Canaanite woman and after the Canaanite woman. Because before the Canaanite woman, Jesus is actually very clear about who his mission is to. He sends out the disciples and he tells them, do not go into Gentile territories, only deliver this to Jews. But at the end of Matthew, after the Canaanite woman, Jesus gives us the Great Commission and he says, go out and baptize, making disciples in my name to all the nations. So I think what we have here in this story is a moment in which Jesus is tired and he's frustrated. He's beginning to get to wit's end. The whole reason he's leaving to go into Tyre and Sidon is because the crowds keep surrounding him and the Pharisees keep coming and asking him questions, trying to trap him. He just needs a break. He needs to get away. He's a little fried and a little tired. He thinks, if I go someplace where they don't know me, I'll be able to refresh my batteries and be able to renew myself, to take some time off, to take his Sabbath. And so he's crossed over into this territory looking for a break. And the first thing happens is this woman comes shouting at him, and she's a Canaanite. It's this woman who catches him, as one commentator said, with his compassion down. And most of us have been in familiar situations. We're just having a bad day. And that one person just hits us at exactly the wrong time, and we don't really think about what we say. We just spout out something. And we're instantly, ooh, I shouldn't have said that. If we had thought about it for a moment, we wouldn't have said it. But it's the woman's response to what Jesus says to her that really stops everyone, because she changes the entire narrative of what's happening when she says, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat from the crumbs that fall from the master's table." The Canaanite woman is the only one in the Gospels who has sort of a battle of wits with Jesus and wins. Everyone else walks away differently. She wins this battle of wits. And not only does she walk away differently, but Jesus walks away differently, I believe, because he's forced to confront the prejudices of his own culture, of how Jews view Canaanites, and to see that his message is not just to the lost sheep of Israel, that it's to everybody, to all the nations, even the Canaanites. Now, there are plenty of people who want to try and soften this story, who want to make it something different than it is, to try to add things or remove things in order to make Jesus fit the image that we have of this, because this doesn't fit with who we imagine Jesus is, of what he does, of what he has to be. And so we want to make this story different. But I think to do that is a mistake. Reverend Stephen Charleston says, we need to let the integrity of this strange, bizarre story stand on its own. We need to allow this moment to confront us, to say that Jesus, in fact, lived as a member of his own culture and was acting in a very human way of dismissing someone else for all the stereotypes and for all the reasons we might mention, because she was a foreigner, because she was different, because she was female, because she was pushy. Jesus treats the woman as his culture treats her, which is basically to ignore her until something happens that they have to deal with her, when they can't push her off anymore. But then Jesus goes one step beyond that. He stops and he actually listens to what she has to say. And then he shows her mercy. Mercy is a big thing in the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus quotes from Hosea several times that God demands mercy, not sacrifice. Jesus listens to her and he shows her mercy. So not only is she changed, but Jesus is changed by this encounter as well. So the question for us is, how are we going to respond to people who are crying out for mercy? Are we going to ignore them and just pretend that they're not there and hope that they go away? Are we going to listen but not do anything about it? Or are we going to hear their cry for mercy and not only respond to change their lives, but to change our lives as well, to change the future? Because I think we stand at one of those critical points in our history that we can really say, looking back 50 years from now, that there was that split, that there was BB and AB, before Baltimore or after Baltimore, or wherever the next thing that rises up is. Because we don't need to go to Baltimore to find these problems. We can find them right here in Albuquerque. We don't have to go far to find people who are crying out for mercy. Help me. Heal my children. Heal my community. Heal my nation. How many more mothers do we need to hear crying out before we're going to stand up and say that you're going to know us by our love? Because we cross a boundary this morning when we come to this table. We cross out of our lives, we cross over into the sacred. We cross over into God's territory. Because this isn't our table. We hear that again and again. This is Christ's table. It's not anything that we do that gives the cup and the bread. It's not our mercy that's shown there. It's God's mercy given to us. It's God's love poured out for us. It's God saying that I believe that everybody in the entire world is a beloved child. What we heard in that passage from 1 John is that anybody who says that they love God but doesn't love the world is a liar. We are called to see each other, to treat each other, to act as if we are all brothers and sisters. I pray that it will be so. Amen.